All right,
Hey,
so here we go. Thanks for joining us, Samir.
no, thanks for inviting. I think this is interesting to just meet new folks and what's happening out there. Sometime outside your own zone, it's good to connect. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So lots of folks here are SDRs, BDRs, people early in their careers, and several more on the Slack community are also kind of in those stages. Someone like you who's got more than a decade of experience in sales, it'll be good to hear your story, how you've seen the market shifts and evolution. Like we were just talking about how SaaS companies are, trying to grow faster and get into the market, figure out their niche, get into the ICP and so on. So
Yeah,
idea was to hear and get a perspective on your experience so other people can use it as they're learning.
sure,
So talk
sure.
about your journey. Like where did it all start?
Yeah, so I've got almost about 2 decades of experience, and out of that, about 16 plus years, 16 around would be in IT. I started in telecom. We were selling routers back then, early 2000 in the UK for a company in UK. But then in 2004 is when I started my journey with IT sales. And I think if you know back then, sales was just about selling services. And I remember when I started when I joined this company in Delhi. They wanted the head of sales was actually this company was formed by a couple of ex IITians and I am Ahmedabad colleagues. So the guy who had sales was also in Aviva, and he was in insurance. So he said, "I want to start something in insurance." I remember that when I was starting to understand what we have to sell, basically we didn't have anything at that time, So I had to spend the first week, 10 days, just to read about what sort of softwares are available in insurance. And actuarial softwares, then just document management softwares, then everything, like just to understand where and what you're going to position your services into, right? And then the other challenge at that time was that you didn't even have any data, like you couldn't buy data at that time. So I remember the way I started was there's some free sites like Yellow Pages, Yahoo directory was there, Demos used to be there, a bunch of those, right? So the first attempt used to be just find data, right? Data to call you. And they had these, they used to have these alphabetically company website listed there. So you got to go choose the website which you feel fits the bill and is a software company. And then you never had contact. So you will go and, so the journey, I think, of SaaS back then, not sorry, of IT sales or inside sales in India started in a very aggressive and a very hard manner, right? Which today I feel is so much easier for people to get very successful at, right? But it also comes with a lot more competition as versus back then, right? Everyone had their own niche that they could talk about, and others would follow in. But then people would like to keep their own. So yeah, I mean, 2004 is when I started. 2006, I came to Bangalore. I joined Oracle. I was involved in establishing part of the first 4 or 5 people who were involved in establishing the first ever inside sales team anywhere in Oracle to sell consulting services. So these are very complex, detailed sales cycle where one, you got to find someone who wants to buy Oracle services and has Oracle products. That wasn't that hard because we used to use our existing customers because Oracle had that. But then because Oracle had acquired almost 60, 70 acquisitions, there were so many teams, everyone selling the same customer, it wasn't easy back then. So I was there for about 6 years. I was involved in building and being and experiencing the entire, entire setup, right? Right from thinking, designing, working with programs team, and then creating different strategies for growth pipeline, so on and so forth, right? So that happened for 6 years. Very complex technology sales at that time. Then 2012 is when I started my SaaS journey. I joined a company called Replicon at that time. So they had a captive in India, and they just had a headquarter in the Bay Area in 2004, and they were doing pretty well. Like at that time, I think the growth in SaaS was just 10, 15, 20%. That's good enough for them. And they were doing like 1 million every year. And this is very funny when I so when I took a break in 2016 and then wanted to do something on my own, was not in Bangalore. I went to Delhi, Gurgaon, came back in 2019. Everything has changed. Like there were so many SaaS companies. There were things that people thought they already know, and definitions were so different than what we used to do, at least till 2016 when I was there. I think hardly 2 or 3 companies were there, Metric Stream and Akamai, but that wasn't really a SaaS company because it was into something else. But very few companies were there, right? But I would like to share what was my first experience of SaaS, and then I'll take the next 2 minutes, and then I'll stop and maybe we can take some questions. So that was my first experience working in SaaS. A lot of learning. The only sales leader in India. I set up their global sales at that time, and I would say Replicon was a very big success story. But then I think somewhere it stopped right after I left, and then people stopped talking about that company versus a lot others that came in. So I'll tell you why I felt it was amazing during 2012 to 2016. So when I started 2013, they were a 13 million ARR company, and that was about 15 years or so in business. In 2.5 years, in 2.5 years from that point onwards, I built their new sales as well as their account management. So we had about roughly 2 people in account management, 4 people in new sales. We used to do very small sales from India. I think they were just selling 50 employees and below accounts. Everything else was like, distributed to other teams in the US. And you won't believe that in 2.5 years, while building both the teams consistently year on year, growing the business from India, then I was working with the CEO closely in also in profitability and alignment. So we then decided that we'll get the entire account management in India, and then we'll convert the field sales account managers or enterprise account managers into CSMs, right? So they'll go. We had a range of products. So we had a project management solution as well as a workforce management solution. So larger deals required people to go and spend some time there as well. And you won't believe that in 2.5 years, from 13 million, the growth was 38 million. So the company grew in just 2.5 years to 38 million from 13 million, which was there for 15 to 16 years, right? And the thing I'm very proud of is that out of that 25 million ARR growth over 2.5 years, almost about 15 million came from the teams that we built in India. Both account management as well as new sales. So and then when I left after that for my own startup, I think then they couldn't really carry that same momentum, I think, and then they suddenly just stopped the growth, right? They did multiple experiments after that. It didn't really work out for them, so very slow. It's still close to the CEOs, but that's the time when SaaS was growing, and I think they stopped that tremendous growth that happened. But a lot of learning during that time, and I've been lucky enough to experience all facets of a SaaS company, right? Because I built both new sales from 6 people. We were about 45 people in 2.5 years. A lot of people got promoted during that time to stick around. So the understanding was that first, SaaS products are very different to obviously traditional products, right? And then the other piece is that SaaS cannot work in solace. Like you cannot have silos when you're working or building your SaaS product, right? Have to make sure that that new sales before, let's start from BD, right? Business development or SDR, BDRs, whatever you call them today, but business development job has to be in sync with the targets of sales, and they cannot work separately, right? They have to believe that it's not just pipe gen, but it's quality pipe gen, right? And it works both ways, right? You can change multiple incentive spiffs just to make sure people are happy, but then like the DNA has to be very, very realistic, right? And then when new sales is bringing in customers, they need to be very in sync with the situation at ground, depending on their product. If they require implementation, if it's a complex sales cycle, are there any product gaps that they committed? Are they in sync with those things as they bring them in, right? So the account management and new sales collaboration has to be top notch, right? And there has to be a very good handoff process that involves people and expectations by people and role, right, during that process as they bring in. And then subsequently what support sets up as expectation, what renewal sets up as expectation, and then overall how we working quarter on quarter with products and product marketing, and not separately sitting at our corners and just doing our numbers, being happy, right? So yeah, I'll just stop here. I know it was a long monologue, but
while you were talking about it, there were two questions that came up in my mind. So one thing is, I don't know if everybody here, given the vintage and around when they started their sales career, know what's the meaning of a captive. So captive is typically the Indian offshore development center of a US company. Okay. The good part is, in the SaaS industry today, captive is completely out of fashion.
Yes.
Okay, which is great, because you are so removed from corporate HQ decision making that whatever you do really doesn't make a difference to corporate, unless you do it like, screw up at a massive scale. But I think Sameer's Replicon journey is one of those unique situations where they actually built a revenue line by putting together a sales and account management team in a captive. Yep. Most captives would have only product and engineering people and QA people and ops people, a few product and even fewer sales. Okay, so I can speak from the Yahoo experience I've had, and that's kind of how we've seen it. So it's a very, very different kind of an experience. And the second thing you pointed out is the focus on a very coherent process across new customer acquisition and growth and managing the account, right?
Yeah.
Often people tend to associate the SDR or BDR role with, like, top of the funnel pipe gen, set up meetings and move on with your life.
Yeah.
Right? How have you seen that change over time?
I don't know if process wise that change has happened. I would say individuals themselves have matured enough to take on more responsibilities. A lot of smaller startups probably have that culture to let people do a lot more. So I would say people want to change that. I wouldn't say that necessarily the role has kind of evolved as much, right? But what has definitely evolved is the knowledge and the level of training and amount of time we want to put into these roles as versus probably earlier, right? And there are two sides to it, right? I'll tell you practically how I have looked at the BDR role and the BD role and the sales role. And I'll tell you some challenges of this role also, right? The biggest challenge is that you don't you get into the BD role because that's the starting role, but you don't want to stay in that role. Everyone wants to be a AE, right? Everyone wants to be a sales rep in a year or so. And I can tell you that, people just don't know why it's important to spend time in a role. I'll just spend some time explaining to some of the folks over here who are probably BD. So this is long back in 2011, I think, when I was at Oracle, and I was taking care of just a pure BD team for about 5 quarters. That was my first time just managing BD. And I was not managing a sales team at that time, right? So I was doing I was just helping a team that was under the projections for a while. So, the team always came to me and said, I want to be a sales rep. And they always used to aspire to be a sales rep. And my question to them used to be that, so my answer to them was that, look, you don't need to undermine your role, right? I mean, there's a reason why we keep roles, because roles are based on what you need at that moment, right? I don't expect a BDR to do sales role. I don't expect a sales guy or an AE to do BDR role. Why? Because of optimum utilization, right? when we are setting up teams, one of the things that people actually don't do well is set clear expectation and timelines, right? As to till when you got to do this in my company and what I expect you during that time. Don't worry about other things, right? You'll get there and then learn, and there'll be a time to learn. So I told them that, look, what you don't look at is, see, an SDR role is probably one of the most interesting roles that you can have when you're starting an IT career, right? In sales. And I'll tell you why. The reason is that you don't spend enough time really knowing the mechanics of that role. Now, what are the mechanics of an SDR role? Look at, you're the only person who's very close to marketing, right? You're the person who's reading all the emails, for whom the emails are written. You're the one for whom the product is doing a lot more trainings. You're the one for whom the first line of every information comes, right? You're the one who's reading all these events that we are planning, right? How we are planning, why we are planning. You're the one who are calling them up. You're the one who are actually doing the real meaty part about, where and why my product fits in, and who does it give value to, right? So don't undermine that role. Don't stop learning in that role, because there's so much to learn in that role, right? As an AE, people stop doing this role, and that's why AEs have a bigger challenge scaling up when they change companies and they get into larger and bigger product to sell, right? Which requires probably a little bit more complex sales cycle, because they forget that research part and understanding why a person is buying is very important, and it continues, right? So I would say this has been my understanding and my feedback to the SDR world as well, that give it your time. Always go back and ask your management to give you a sales development plan, right? I've always built that in any company that I've worked, that the moment you bring people in, make sure they're aware that in 1.5 years or 1 or 2 years, they will become a sales rep, but there are certain things you need to do. So have those checks and balances. Performance has to be there, learning has to be there. Take initiatives on your own. You don't need to worry about not being, you don't have to be a team lead to do things, right? Today, you can take initiatives on your own. You can see the areas that needs improvement in your team itself and pick them up, find the solution, and, have a process around and rally the team and lead that. And then wait your time, right? Train yourself to be an AE. Don't just try to rush into an AE just because you've qualified a few meeting. It's not easy like that. I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So I said this was literally music to my ears. In fact, in one of the earlier conversations, Akhil and I were talking about, he was actually talking about how the SDR tenures have shrunk from like 2 years to like a few months.
Yep.
Okay. And he was actually curious to see what your inputs might be. And I think you kind of spot on, you answered that question.
Yeah, and it's just and that's why, if you see, right, and I'll tell you how I have always hired people and looked at people, and I've given feedback to people as well, who during interviews think that they are ready to make the change, right? And the thing is, see, when you look at a person, so people always talk about, hey, you just worked so less in the last 2 companies, right? Why are you looking for a change? See, it's not about, I don't look at working less in a company as a deterrent for a person. Like, nobody leaves a job because they need more money. Like, how long can you do that? Maybe the last 2 companies, right? You don't keep on doing that, and nobody's going to give you as much money for the same role. So yeah, 2 companies you've jumped, that is okay. That also shows that the person is confident he wants to move, because you got to crack interviews, right? But the main thing is, what I look at when a person has jumped over 2 companies in the last 1 year or 1.5 years, and not really completed 1 full year. That means 4 full quarters of 1 performance cycle. That means you've not really tested your own skills and abilities in that environment, right? You've not learned how to be consistently performing, because obviously, you have to stay 4 quarters to really achieve your numbers, right? And to know that you were consistent enough, right? So for me, that's very important. For me, it's very important to see that if you've not been through 1 full cycle of a performance, that means that you've not really gone through the grind. You've not seen everything. You cannot innovate in 6 months. Like, you cannot create strategies in 6 months for a product that you've just started to sell. it's just not possible, right? You can get all the books in the world, people give you script, but you just cannot, like, sales is not about just saying the same script, right? It's innovating on the script. It's from one conversation to the other, like researching, understanding, reading about your competition and then how they're evolving, how you want to change, right? Losses that you get through. You can't learn anything in 6 months, right? So I would say my take is a little different to that. I don't judge people, or I don't expect people to be judged just on the time they spend. But the idea is that, you know, you just don't learn if you don't spend enough time in one company in a full cycle, right? So something that people should focus at when they think about jobs. Just because for a short while, you know, it doesn't interest you, but the learning is the same. You know, it doesn't matter what product you're selling, but the learning will be the same. You will learn something if you spend enough time in a company.
Interesting. So there is a lot of talk right now about, you know, companies going through tough times, market corrections in. And I'm sure several people in this group, and maybe those who are going to listen to this, have it on their minds. Arey, mera kya hoga? Right? So how have you seen, you know, people who come through these tough cycles? I'm sure you have lived through like 3 or 4 such cycles. What is their mindset? How do they kind of get through this and still, you know, stay focused on the ball?
Are you saying in terms of salaries?
So basically, I think what tends to happen is people start feeling a level of insecurity,
Right.
that kind of shows up like Virat Kohli's batting.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you kind of get over that initial?
So I'll tell you what I have always I have always done myself, and I have seen. So one thing I can tell you. So Oracle, Oracle, or even at the telecom company. In fact, 23, 24 is when I built my first outbound team. You know, and I had no clue how to do that. Like we had a new senior VP, and he said nobody else can do it. We used to do retention for that company. And he said, we need to go and sell because we'll get more money. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And I built that. So in 6 months, we built, but it was a B2C campaign, but in the UK, selling out of Gurgaon. And I scaled that from 5 people to about 60 people in about 6 months. I think our average, if you say in terms of ARR, maybe around 5K or something used to be for one business, because it was a monthly billing that we used to do. So from there to Oracle, for where I had about 20 odd people, but very we used to close. I think last year I closed about 20 million revenue with about 13 people. And a pipeline, I think we were managing about 30 million or so in a year, right? But average sales cycle at that time would be about 75K to 100. The largest deal I closed from India was about 740K or something, I think. And this was selling consulting services, not just a product that's easy to sell. So it was a little more complex. But and then in Replicon, over 4 years, 2 different teams. I've always managed like a less than 2% attrition. I've never had people who leave, never. Like, and this is where the answer lies on what you just said, right? The question is not really about the company you join. The question is about what the company needs and what do you think you can contribute. You know, as long as you have that mindset of not worrying about how things are set up, what and where I should get and how I should get to really get my peace of mind. I think it's more to do with getting involved, right? If you're involved in every mechanics of the company, you will be satisfied. You will know that, hey, while the book says, while the humor say, the rumor says that, hey, oh, we're in a bad soup. No, it's not, because the product is not sounding that way. You know, the GTA motion seems to be very upbeat about doing 2 events outside, and they're investing money. I see that pipeline is not reducing. I see the total sales are still fine. People are able to qualify around me. Revenue is still there and people are able to close. Like, there's signs that you can see in companies, right? Would tell you that it's good or bad. It's not about just sound around, right? And if you are the one who's typically not the one who comes to the office with already given targets and says, I just want to do this and I want to go home, that's it, then you'll always be in a position where you're not comfortable, right? Unless you're like a superstar and you're doing well and you're like more than 110, 20% all the time, you will always end up being in that discussion zone, right? You'll always be in that out of that, the tap water conversation, that happens, right? But I would say I'll always advise people is that be conscious about the company, right? It's not hard to just know on what basis the company has projected numbers, on what basis the company is running and building its next momentum, right? Just be involved, just make sure that you reach out to people. You should have your own sense of company, right? What are the 5-6 things? I just mentioned the 5-6 things that you can always be upbeat with, and then nobody stops you from asking questions, right? I would say that would be my suggestion to people in today's world, in the current scenario. And then of course the whole thing is your number should be there, right? You should be clear on your numbers all the time. You should make sure that you have a success plan. I always tell people that no matter what role you join in sales, be it BD, be it account management, be it CSMs, whatever, always have your own success plan. Now, a success plan basically is very simple. It just means that if you have a target given, if let's say 100K in a year is your number, or 500K a year is a number, or 30 opportunities a month or a quarter is your number, as an SDR. Now that number can always be calculated down to your target. Like it will always, like 10% deviation, yes, but you will always end up, like if you need 10 opportunity, then you have a 10%, 20%, 30%, 50% conversion to leads, then from leads to sales. Like you just have to have that plan, right? And when you have that plan, you keep on breaking it down. Like for everything, for one conversation, you need emails, you need LinkedIn messages, you need phone calls, right? Then you start dividing. You do 2 webinars. I usually do 2 webinars, or the company does 3 webinars, so I can put all, like the plan should be your own plan. You get the targets, you get your management numbers, that's okay. But build your own plan so that every day when you close your day, you should know what you have to achieve that day. It could either be moving one deal to the next 1-2 conversations. Your task cannot be just task on your CRM. The task has to be like what you have given for yourself in a day to achieve a number, and that number you just keep revising as you see progression. So I would say those are 2 things that I would tell people, in not just today's world, anytime, right? To make sure that you're not confused about where you're sitting today and what you plan to do there.
That's wonderful. Really, I think this is advice people can actually take back and go and do stuff. Like I know 2 of our SDRs are on the call, and I'm sure 3 of us will have a discussion around this tonight.
I'm glad.
Thank you. Signeasy.
Yeah.
A very atypical company. Several years bootstrapped, built a profitable business, then went and raised some money recently, and fantastic progress, going global, and you're now the head of sales. How does the whole thing evolve, and where do you guys go from here on? Like talk a little bit about your team, the culture, how you guys execute. How do you think about that?
So see the way. So I'll tell you a few things that are very important to any growing company, right? Any company that wants to, and let's just talk about sales, right? Because it's the most important function. So a few things that I look at is hiring. Hiring is very important, right? Hiring is always on the top in terms of who you want to hire and why you want to hire, right? It is not about, like I said earlier also, right? It is not about the one who has the best experience. No, you should be looking at people who can deliver, right? I mean, as a sales leadership and the management team, I always make sure that I have all the things in place to get a B rep and make him into an A rep within a certain amount of time that requires, right? For me, my product, my ACV, so on and so forth, my sales cycle, right? That should always be there, right? That every person should build that. So that's the first thing I work on, is to build that. Then the second thing is that what type of hiring do we need at what time, right? So we can hire quickly. We can get the best if you want a very senior or a complex role that we're defining. Then the second thing is the idea of, like, the second thing is ramp up, right? I think it's very important that people should know the first day they join a company and to the day that they're gonna start working. I personally believe that nobody in any role should come into and actually have like a 3 weeks of training boot camp. I just don't understand the idea of boot camp. It's just me. I'll tell you how my boot camps are. And it doesn't matter what product you're selling. I've always made sure that sales rep have started to sell in 2 weeks. Like they're on the phone in 2 weeks and they're actually doing some contribution towards that, right? And I'll tell you an easy way to do that. The easy
टाइम एक बड़ी पेंटिंग बनाई थी, कहाँ मिलेगी वो? वो एक मीटिंग चल रही है।
Okay, Harsh, do you want to keep your this thing on mute? Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So and the other the one thing that I do is I create like a core competency areas in my team. Okay, what do you mean by core competency? Is a very smart way of understanding the mechanics of your team, right? So the most important thing is your product training, right? Product training, and then the second thing is all the things that sales has built and created, which is very very rebuttal, very objection oriented, very battle card oriented, things like those that you use on day-to-day communication to be better, right? Then it's tools, the tools that you use. It could be an approval process tool, it could be a CRM, it could be your maybe a CPQ tool that you use. It could be internal tools that you have, right? Where maybe talking to support, maybe uploading an SR, maybe checking that, whatever that might be. So tools is another. And then subsequently you have 4-5 areas that you call, and you should decide whatever you feel is important for your team as core competency areas, right? And what you do smartly is not to build this and give it to a training team to do that. But what you do is you build core competency people in your team, your reps, right? So even if you have a 10, 20, 10 people team, you start making these people own those core competency areas, right? So what happens is, one thing that has always helped me is that the moment a new guy comes in, he doesn't have a buddy. I don't like the idea of a buddy. I like the idea of him being able to be buddy with everyone, right? So what you do is like this core competency covers his entire journey with these people in that limited it usually happens in 7-8 days only, because it's not like so many things. But in a week or 10 days, the person has gone through all the right things from the right people, right? Not just someone who's like off the view and just training people on a certain PPT and a certain directional things and just moving on, right? But these are ones who are live and talking at the same time, right? And what happens is that what has always worked well for me is that, the feedback comes very natural to me as leader, right? From the team itself, like how good the person is. Did we do something wrong during hiring? Did we miss out on something, right? Because the feedback is coming because the ownership is together. It's not just a manager hired someone, he introduced, there was one buddy, and now we need to make friends with this guy, right? So everyone becomes friend with anyone new in 10 days. And he's comfortable to go and walk up to anyone. He doesn't need a manager or a buddy or a person to just go and fix his problem, right? So that's very important. Like creating that story of ramp up for people in your team, I think is very important. And then it's collaboration. One of the biggest thing is collaboration. I have always, and I was lucky, like I said, right? So my first SaaS, I realized that we need to know about implementation team and what their problems are, because we're losing deal in implementation. That largely comes from new sales committing something and account management not being aware of it, implementation not being aware of it. So, and then subsequently product is building something, but we not really aware of what and where and how and what shape it's going to come out in, right? And not having the confidence to talk like a product guy would talk about it, because they're too deeply involved. So the other is collaboration, right? How do you create a collaboration in team which is not very cadence driven? It should be cadence, but the idea of the cadences is not about just showing and talking, but actually expressing and collaborating, right? So with product, make sure that you have a sync up every week or bi-week or monthly, whichever works out for you guys in your company, to just talk about bug fixes. So a product update cannot just be about what we improved. It should be relevant to sales. So CSM has a different, earlier we used to have one common. So I changed it to say CSM AM should have a different product sync, and new sales should have a different product sync along with BD, because they need to know about different product enhancements versus the ones that are happening otherwise, right? So I would say those are a few of the things that we're doing. And how we're building the next zone is that one of the things I also do is to make sure I am innovating on the product as well, and not just executing on the sales side, right? So we are designing the product, looking at e-signature in a different way now. So that's an interesting area that we want to invest in. I can't talk much about it, but the idea is to, the way I look at things is, your product always gives an ROI to someone, and that ROI always is the revenue saving, or you're either saving that revenue or you're keeping it constant, but it has to hit the revenue. So yeah, bunch of things are happening. We are looking at we started some expansion motions and outbound motions. Not an easy things, but yeah, overall bunch of things are happening. Exciting times. Let's see. I mean, market is exciting, but I keep telling people that don't worry about the market, right? You should know your area, right? So for example, some people, some sentiments were shared a while back that people are looking at mobile companies, in disinvesting more on mobile, more on browser based. People are combining these two, investing going low. And my point was, think about it, right? Not every company uses everything, right? Every product, like a project management tool, does not use mobile at all, right? Other than approving something. Salesforce, I don't know how many people will say that, but I have never used it on a mobile, and because it just cannot be used on a mobile, right? Other than just doing a very quick thing of check or something that I can do, right? So it is not a mobile. So you're different to every product is different. Sometimes mobile will not take over because things cannot be on mobile. It will always be browser based. You cannot move that out, right? So nothing like this is going to happen. Product by product, they are either only like you cannot ever expect Uber on browser. You will not book a Uber on browser. It just doesn't make sense to do that, right? Similarly, Swiggy and things and so on. So products are different. You should know what your product capability is and plan it that way. And the other thing is to make sure that how much the market is there available still, and just plan on that. So yeah, I'm sorry about the long monologues though, but it's just too much of stuff in my head just keeps coming out.
You very regularly mentor teams and people, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's just
That's something I've heard from you several times. And I think it's a wonderful thing. If someone from this group or from the community want to, reach out and take some mentorship, how do they do it?
Yeah, please, absolutely. I'll be happy to.
You're on LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Of course. Awesome. There was one other thought that I had while you were talking about this. So how do people keep, again, a lot of my questions are not so much of technique and stuff like that, because I'm myself learning sales. In fact, I learn a lot from the SDRs I work with, Yogesh, Pranav and all. The real thing that I've seen that differentiates people as they grow in their career is their mindset to face new situations. Right? These are people who are like 3, 4, 5 years into their career and first or second jobs and stuff. And you just make a ton of mistakes that look like super stupid when you look back. That's just the nature of the game. Right?
Yeah.
We're just sloppy in the beginning, right? But there is something that is to be said about the mindset with which people progress beyond the first 4 or 5 years. First 4 or 5 years are like literally, like I would say the first 10 years of a career is just for learning, right? After that is earning, right?
Yep.
So in this period, you're also exposed to the maximum noise. Okay, there is Instagram, there is peer pressure, there is, whatever, like stuff is going on, people are doing stuff, like everybody's trying to sound so cool and, all sorted out, but reality is never that. So what would you think, people should think about when they go through the first few years of career? Like, how do they keep a sane head?
So as I said again, right? I mean, earlier I said the same thing, right? This is a very sane head. Again, I mean, it would be about for me. If you ask me philosophically, it's all about your focuses, right? What has been your focuses initially when we were young? When we come in with a different mindset, and I think it all starts from there, right? When you're joining your first company, what is it that you are looking forward to versus what is it that's happening there, right? A lot of us just go with the mindset of let's see what's happening there, and I think that's where it all starts, right? And you can see how the evolution of the current generation is in SaaS is that that's why you see a lot of attrition, you see a lot of changeover. Just give me one second. Thank you. Yeah, so that's because I think the whole mentality right now is that I know it all. and all I need to do is just get there and then spend some time and I'll know everything. Versus the fact that, what is it that I'm looking to learn when I'm joining a company, right? And you define that path. If you're defining that path, I always believe that you always learn in one company and then grow in the other company, right? Unless you get a chance to stay for that long in a company and everything is working your way and it's growing, so on and so forth. But you always learn in one and then you finally grow in the other, because you come in with the right experience to just take advantage of that place, right? And then make sure that you get that visibility. So I would say it is never about keeping your head at the right places, but I would say that it's always about finding a balance between your personal life and your professional life, right? And we all say that, but how many of us really understand what that means? What it means is that when you go to the office, so I'll tell you about this philosophy that I used to tell a lot of my like a lot of the folks who work with me and otherwise, is that if today I give you an option of saying I'll give you $1 million or I'll ask you to go to the office, which one are you going to take, right? Like majority of us are just going to take $1 million and then go away, right? But you don't have that option today, right? You are not going to take that $1 million and go away. You are going to come to the office. And if you are the one who's coming to the office, for me, those 8-9 hours should be probably the most well-spent hours of your life, right? Because you're taking those hours out of your comfort zone, out of your personal space, and spending on a place where otherwise you probably will not come, right? I mean, of course, the other places are that you love it so much and I love my friends. That's a different theory. But what I'm saying is that because you don't have an option, you need to make sure that those 8-9 hours are for something, right? And I would say if you have that philosophy, you will never be swayed away from where you are, right? You'll always be focused on what you want to take every day when you close your shop or when you come to the office the next day, right? So yeah.
That's nice. So basically the importance of being present in those 8-9 hours.
Yeah, present and then divided, like I said earlier, right? Know everything that is happening in a company. Don't just focus on your department, your work. Look at how the entire mechanics work. Someday you will be part of that mechanics. It's never late to start learning today, right? So that's the mentality. If you have that mentality, then every day will be interesting for you. You cannot go back without an interesting day because you were interested to know, like if you're STR and you work with AE and you're working on a deal, we all want to know about what's happening with the deal, right? But then if you go and really go and learn, okay, it got stuck there and this is how you resolved it. It's an interesting day for you, right? It's never going to be boring. Like you're not going to just do your stuff and get bored and close the shop. So yeah.
That's nice. Rajan, you had a question. Do you want to post it in the chat or do you want to just ask?
Yes, I just one question. It's a compliment for a Signeasy, their HR Shravan, because I came across many posts. One of the posts I came across really touched because Shravan helped the employee's family during the children got hurt, and the Shravan gone there and take care. And one of the things really touched me with the Signeasy's culture, and I also interacted with the SDRs of Signeasy also. They give the so much compliment to your sales team and how the HR team gone work. And as you mentioned, they are work with the other teams also, AE teams, SDR team, and sometimes they also work with technical teams. Due to that, they got so much knowledge. And your recent product launch also in IC, it gives you the cutting edge because you are in the competitive field. Like in US, DocSign is clearly meaning. But I also ask one question about every SDR says, which are the tech stack you are using? 1 out of 10 users mentioning 2 Signeasy users. So these are the company or grown. This is the thing. And how do you build the team on scratch onwards in Signeasy, and how do you move forward? Like how they attain the quota without like you mentioned, combine with all the mechanisms.
Yeah, thanks for the compliment. I'll make sure I share that with Shravan and probably mention that to the team as well. Yeah, I'm sorry, but was your question at the end was that how do you build?
How do you like as a SDR, BDR, they are working all through the deal. But
Yeah.
if some miscommunication has happened, the deal would collapse. So mostly BDR, SDR discover the prospect. Mostly some of the information are miscommunicated. The deal got closed because I saw it happen. One of my friends is mentioned because he forgot to mention the important key detail. Due to that, that big deal is gone out. So how do you maintain the communication between the AEs, SDS, and whole the team?
See, this is why I was saying earlier, right? That you need to build that culture, and it's not. Sometimes it's not. You can always make suggestions, but things are things in companies. But you always work with, maybe if you're an SDR, you always work with like dedicated two AEs or in a region or something like that, right? Or at least the AEs that you usually work with. I would say one that has always worked well is to create very clear expectation in terms of what do you need. A lot of time people just expect scant and band to be there, and then they're okay with it, and they say, okay, I've got all the information, let me move on to the next one, right? But that's not how you want to learn, right? Your learning is, as I keep going back, is how are you making sure that you tick marking yourself to say that, am I doing the right job or not, right? Am I learning the right way or not? And I think that is very critical, right? So you can create your own expectation with your AEs, share it with your manager, they can share it with them. Make sure that there are two parts, right? SDR is not supposed to do AE's job first. So be very clear that you're not supposed to ask all the questions. That's not important. But the important part is the SDR should always keep revising these expectations, right? And the AE should also keep revising these expectations to say, market is changing dramatically. And I was talking to Sridhar earlier that SaaS is an area where you will find like 10 competitors in the next 2 years if your product is doing well. That's it. And every time they all will look different, and they all will invest into Google AdWords. So they're all going up and down. And then, people are distracted and they're seeing a lot more competition. So you have to keep revising. So I would say, make two documents. One document should be your document where you keep on revisiting and keep on adding and removing and modifying what way a qualified opportunity should look like today versus it was 6 months back or 3 quarters back. And similarly, the AE should also maintain something that he has taken as a check mark and said, yes, you've done everything that I needed before I took the handover. And if the call is scheduled, you obviously don't end up having a call scheduled the very next day or in the next 2 hours, right? You always have a 24 hours gap before any call is scheduled, if demo is what you schedule as your next step or a discovery, right? And he should quickly verify that. And if there is something you missed out, he should get back to you and say, hey, why don't you check it before the call, right? So there are ways to solve it, but I would say the easiest bit is that make clear expectation and revisit them. I hope that helped.
I think that was quite on point, I would say. I mean, it gives a lot of clarity on like the point you mentioned earlier about being involved and setting the right expectations. How do the handoffs happen? So clearly the sense of this is a team game, people have to work together, pull together to make things happen is very resonating, at least personally to me.
Yeah, I mean,
we had a
sorry, please continue. Please.
No, we had a session with Kanika, who runs sales for Incref a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about how their entire team runs against a certain quota.
Yeah,
they don't have individual quotas. So one of the things that I have noticed in SaaS, especially if you're selling to mid-market and higher up, going up market, is that sales is really a team game, where you need a bunch of people who are very strong individually, but can really up the game by playing together.
Yes, I mean, see, the whole point is so there are two ways to run it. And I'll tell you, the premise of forming these teams is based on a very easy management philosophy. I have always believed that people don't leave companies because of managers, company policies. Yes, there are some managers. Long back, they used to be when they were very strict and their way of working was different. But they were never, like when we say micromanagement, at the end of the day, someone bugging you and constantly pushing you is bad, because that doesn't help you. It should be, but micromanagement as a term, I think, has been just overtly used so much in a negative connotation. But I always felt, and I've told this to a lot of people in my career, is that when you define micromanagement, you actually just keep saying that you're not doing the job well. You never say that the other person is wrong. So for me, micromanagement is just the way to work. It is not bad or good, right? If you were good, nobody is micromanaging you. So I would say the first thing is, make sure that your team has an environment where feedback is taken very positively, and that drives from your managers, your team leads, up to the management, to say that anyone who gives feedback, if that feedback, and we all know, right, when people are giving feedback just because they want to give feedback, right? It happens a lot in SaaS, right? You just want to create these relationships. I would say the first thing that people should always know is that your team, everyone is open to give feedback. The idea is that we have a target and we will achieve it when everyone contributes, right? And we will not achieve it if two people are not good and they're not improving. So make sure that everyone is part of that wheel as a cog, and then everyone is working together. If one is not doing the right parts of putting oil, then you need to make sure that you're telling him, right? It's not about escalation. It's about just being cohesive, right? It's just being cohesive about the importance of everyone working together. And then the accountability sets back on the people, right? Never spend time on too many things which are reportable, right? Just spend time on like the results and why nots, right? And the learnings. And I would say that keeps that team going, right? That culture is like that. Culture creates a lot of synergy, and individually you talk to them about their numbers, but then collectively you always talk about the team number, right?
Wonderful. I think a whole lot of information. Okay. Enough to digest for the weekend and probably next few weeks. So yeah, I just want to take a pause and see if anyone else in the audience has more questions. If not, we can probably wrap up the session.
Probably I have one last question.
Go for it, Vamshi.
Hey Samir, this is Vamshi. I'm working with Outlay. So when I was an SDR like 2 years ago, and I was more of a quality person back then. Now I'm into revenue operations. I'm looking more of quantity now, right? So what should SDRs focus more on? Is it a combination of both, or is it just like a quality they should focus on?
So when you say quality, are you talking about like how do you define quality right now? Quality, I understand.
Maybe the personalization I do over emails, or the phone reach out I do, maybe specific. Maybe I reach out to only the prospects that have the high personalization over phone, or when they open my email. So that thing I'm talking about. Yeah.
Well, once I would tell you that there's no one thing that works and the other doesn't, right? The whole thing is about prioritization and the percentage of prioritization that you want to do, right? Because if you're looking at nowadays, we have sequences and all that, so you know who opened, who clicked, blah blah blah. Not blah blah blah, but yeah, I mean in a way that that it's easy for you to guess. But think about it this way, right? If your target is to get 10 qualified opportunities in a month, and your clicks are only giving you 20, you can't focus on the only 20, right? It won't give you those 10, right? Because you won't have a 50% conversion. So what I'm saying is both and all, I would say, right? So it depends on what you're looking for. I generally like that people should have multiple plans, right? So one plan should be just focused on the clicks, the open rates. Then the other is the one who are not doing anything, right? What are we doing on that? So it is not just one thing, but I would say all the things. Quantity is the end result, I would say, right? Quality, I would say, you still will always manage to get a percentage conversion only, no matter how great the quality is, right? The quality always depends on the sales cycle. It doesn't depend on the customer who's talking to you, because that same customer is saying the same thing, reacting the same way to the other two competition that you have, and he's doing that right now. You're not the only one who's doing it too. So that's the biggest reality you should know. Like moving through the sales cycle or the sales stages is not selling. Knowing what the value you're giving as you move through the sales stages and creating a relationship which is beyond the stages is selling, right? So you need to be very clear on what is it that you're accomplishing with these things.
Understand. So I have a follow-up question. Sorry to extend this. Yeah.
No, please.
So I have 2 members in my team. One person, he's of like, if you give him 20 contacts, he's really good at pulling out a meeting out of those 20 contacts. There is one more person, if you give him 60 contacts, he's capable of pulling out a meeting from those 60 contacts. Like one person is a quantity person and the second one is a quality person.
Yeah.
So how do this person, like the quality person, convince his manager that, see, even if you give me 60 leads, that will waste my time because I focus more on the 20 leads. So how do you deal with that? Like if someone is of a quality person, do you make him work on the qualitative way, or do you still suggest him work as per the others, like same as the others in the team?
I would say that, there's no straightforward answer to that, right? It all depends on management, manager, the way he expects, the way he reads people and all. I would say the main thing is you always run with your goals, right? You don't change goals based on someone being better or
Yeah.
worse, right? Your goals are always there. Your goals are always set. I would say the focus should always be on the goals. If the goals are getting better, either you make the benchmark higher based on that goal, then the benchmark goes higher for everyone, right? That's the right way to do it. But someone who's, and you know that the quality piece, now I get your quality piece question. So the quality piece is an art, right? It is not something that people can learn. It's just something, as I said, right? Consciously, you have to create that over time. And quality gets you the ones which will give you the bigger conversion. So you remain on the fact that you don't look at you will never get that same amount because you spend more time. Obviously it's a clear math, right? Time taken to make 60 calls versus time taken to make 10 calls, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
So if you are taking so much of time to make 10 maybe 10, 20, 30 calls, but you're getting 10 of those versus the other person makes 60 calls, you are spending time somewhere, right? It is not that math, it's about the quality. So I would say it should always go back to the target. If you set a target, you should stick to that target. If you find there is a way you figured out that it can be optimized, then you set that as a target, and then everyone understands and believes in that.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. That answered my question. Yeah.
Cool. Great.
Nice. Awesome. I think we've taken a lot of Sameer's time, but he'll generally be more happy.
It was a pleasure. Yeah, I liked it, and I would just hope that you guys benefited out of this, and yeah.
I'm taking a bunch of lessons. So I keep telling my team, this is the first time I'm actually doing sales across several companies. And I also have to build the sales team. So I keep telling them that, look, I'm going to learn from you guys every day. We'll figure out stuff together. So it's an interesting experience personally for me. So thanks, Sameer, so much for spending time talking us through your journey. The points around involvement, focus on the present, learn something and have your own personal development goals and stuff. Those are all very on point. So really appreciate your time and effort. If it's okay with you, we would love to, we have the session recorded. We'd love to have this published, if that's fine with you. Yogesh has a question. Yogesh, go for it.
Right, Yogesh.
Hey, hi, Sameer. So I'm Yogesh and I work with Sridhar right now as an SDR with B2B.
Oh, nice.
So I had a question. So because as an SDR, we usually focused on getting meetings initially at my previous organization. So do you have a sort of playbook for account growth? So once you get your initial closures and with smaller ticket sizes, how do you nurture these prospects and get to grow into their account? Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, a lot, right? So it's not as easy as that. There are multiple areas that you got to focus on, but I would tell you, so one thing for you, Sridhar, is that, way back in 2013, as I started to build my SaaS AM along with the new sales, I'll come back to you, Yogesh, because you might learn from this also, is that, it was always about optimization. It was not the conscious reason to optimize. Like, I'm not a optimization person to optimize everybody's time. You would have guessed that from the answer I gave to Amsi. But the idea is that, are we really recognizing that we are really delivering what we have to, right? So when I saw that we had to grow the account management, I had a different pipeline tracking at that time, right? So I would never track just the pipeline number. I would always track pipeline by types. So it would be there's always a natural growth that's going to happen, right? If you don't write a single email to anyone, they will write an email the moment they need something. So there's always a natural growth that's going to happen. You can't do anything about it. You don't need people for that also, right? But that's going to be limited. Then there are values that you can give to other people who are not aware of it, right? So the thing is, always track pipeline by type. So pipeline by type is, One is natural growth. That's one that's just come from the same contact without any interference. If you must have written a renewal email, but that's a natural pipeline. Then the second is if you have additional modules that you can sell, right? So additional module pipeline, like they should be specific about additional modules separate to the average growth from whatever they currently have. Then the third type of pipeline is by contacts or by location, right? And then by if you have any other any other geography or any other way, but by contact, by LOB is where you start to look at how much are you knowing about the other teams and how many people from the other departments you're adding, which are not part of my current CRM or my current admin profile or contact profile, whatever that might be that I communicate with, right? So one is start thinking that way. It's a better way to train the team when you're building account management. And to your question, Yogesh, multiple things, right? Some of which I just covered. What you start to look at is the value proposition, right? So one is whatever product you're selling, it always provides a value. Please remember, people evaluate solutions for features. Okay, always remember this. Anyone who wants to buy something or solve a problem, he evaluates and he does demos, he does trials for features, but he only buys when he gets an ROI in that investment, because he has to pay money at the end of the day, right? So always make sure that when you are selling your product, what is the ROI the person got after you implemented the product and they started using it? Go back and start finding and give it back to them, right? Now that becomes a reportable thing to them in a quarterly way or whatever way you feel enough value will be provided. Then the second is white spacing, right? White spacing basically means, let's say your product is sold to salespeople only, right? But the product the product is not only for salespeople. Like marketing can also get some information because they want to do some trend analysis. They want to learn something here and there, right? Maybe if you have let's say if you have a customer who probably is only for sales, but they're, let's say, the weirdest probably, like he's a utility company, right? It's a utility company probably, right? But they have a sales team. But they remember that every customer that you have also is selling something, either a product or a service. So you have to start thinking about what is it that they need, right? And then start to penetrate and then start to white space, use tools like Zoom or Lucia or things like that, depending on how much investment you want to make, or just LinkedIn, to build a pipeline by types, right? And then start to use your main guy to give him some value, like in terms of ROI, calculated. And then through him, do multiple things. One, you can do a webinar where you can tell him to introduce other people. One thing I can tell you, which people don't do a lot, is that don't expect your prospects to help you. Okay. You should tell them exactly what you want them to do, right? So for example, if you want someone to introduce you to other people in the company, tell him that, hey, here is it that we have been able to help you with. Give him some numbers so he's excited about it. The savings, the time saved, because of the time saved, what was the impact, whether you were able to close deal faster, so the revenue recognition became faster, whatever that might be, right, for your product or your service. Then give him that confidence. Then tell him, hey, look, here are the other two people that I feel I should be talking to. If you can't get a name, tell him that the department would be this, the designation typically would be this. I was not able to find anyone on the website or otherwise. Can you please help me with the name, right? Or you can say, here is the person that I want you to introduce me to, and here is the message that I want you to pass to him. Don't just leave it on the person. See, a lot of time we do is we just say, hey, you know what, can you please introduce me to this person? Or can you please forward this email to someone? No, tell them exactly what you want them to do for you. You can't expect a salesy email to go through internal person, right? You want a very custom email. So write an email that suits that person to send to that person that you are asking him to refer to. So some of these things, and then of course, white spacing the company by location. You can go to their hiring page and their career page will give you exactly how many openings they have. Based on the openings and the type of the openings, you can check where you can expect growth to happen. And then by that, you can go to services, go to the products they have. That'll tell you where they are planning to grow. That gives you an idea as to whether your product will fit there or not, and will help them do those service, deliver those things or not. So yeah, I mean, those will be few places that I could say you can focus on if you're expanding. I hope that helped.
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely it did. It did more than help. I mean, that was a very elaborate answer, and I think I've gained some pretty knowledgeable insights from this session today. Thanks a lot, man.
Great, great. I'm glad you got that.
Awesome. So thanks, Amir, once again. This was a very, very helpful session. Definitely stuff to chew over and think over the weekend and get back more charged up for the Monday.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for this. It was exciting being here. In the future, if you feel there are other areas, I'll be happy. I had a few sales techniques that I thought I'll share maybe in some other session.
We'll do a follow-up session. Absolutely.
Yeah, that can help you guys get in front of your customers and few of the methodologies that I created over time, but never felt like it. It was just shared very gradually and organically. But I think these sessions and nowadays a lot of people are doing a lot of things as versus our time. So I'll be happy to contribute as I can.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for joining, and we'll share the recording in a little bit, maybe overnight. Yeah. Thanks, Amir. Once
All
again.
right. Take care, guys.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.